Good afternoon. Today's webinar will be on food product standards and food additives. On Friday, we looked at the Food Safety and Standards Act, and then we looked at the enforcement structure, how it is enforced across India, and the licensing and registration. Now we come to a relatively more important chapter of the Food Safety and Standards Act, and that is the food product standards and food additives. So this section of the Act and rules and regulations actually covers the food product standards and food additives. And on the FSSAI website, you will see it is version 9 updated on 29th of March 2019. So today I will go through the standards and food additives, and also prohibition, restriction on sales, contaminants, toxins and residues, which is a very small portion of the Act. This Act, the standards and additives, is a very large chapter. It covers about food standards for about 400 products. So it will be very difficult to go into each and every standard, but I will in general tell you what a standard is and how one must look at the standard. So in addition to these chapters, all these following sections, that is regulations on fortification of foods, organic foods, the import of food, food recall, advertising claims, alcoholic beverages, and the nutraceuticals are the more recent additions to the food standards and the food additives chapter. So generally, as in the case of any chapter, it starts with definitions, and to show you or to have you to get a feeling of the chapter, I have just downloaded 2 or 3 definitions. So you see, it defines what an irradiation is. So what is an irradiated food? So it says it's a food which is irradiated with either gamma rays or X-rays generated from machine sources at or below 4 million electronic volts, or it is irradiated by subatomic particles, namely electrons, which are generated from machine sources operated at or below a level of 10 million electron volts, to those levels as specified by our atomic energy rules and regulations. And we have seen previously in the webinar what the rules for irradiation and control for any food business operator to sell irradiated food. The rules and regulations in this also define what is refining of oil. If you look at the standards for oils and fats, in every case you will see the standards for a refined oil. So the oil can be refined as per this definition, that with alkali or by physical refining. You could use a combination of both alkali and physical refining, or you could use a food grade solvent like hexane for refining. And it also indicates that refining, during the refining process, you could include the process of degumming using phosphoric acid, citric acid, or any food grain enzyme as a processing aid. And you know what a processing aid is. Refined vegetable oil is defined also as any vegetable oil which is obtained by expression or solvent extraction of vegetable oil-bearing particles, that is such as the oil seeds, and they are later deacidified with alkali or by physical refining or by micellar refining using food grade solvents, degumming, bleaching, etc. So the definitions which are not there in the Act and some of the definitions which are already there in the Act are repeated in this chapter. Chapter 2 is the most important chapter of this section, and that is the food product standards. The standards for the standardized foods are given here. That means an FBO, if he wants to sell a food, he must meet all these standards of quality, safety, and of the additives, processing aids, pesticide residues, the NODs, that is the naturally occurring toxins, heavy metal residues, etc. So how does one understand or read the food product standards? So if you look at the standards which forms chapter 2 of this section includes 15 different sections of food, and they are divided category wise. So you have fats, oils, dairy products and analogs. You have fats, oils and fat emulsions. You see we have fruit and vegetable products, meat and meat products, fish and fish products, sweets, confectionery, salt, spices, beverages, proprietary food, irradiated food, gluten-free food, and food specially processed to reduce gluten content. So among these, we have got subsections and subsections. So if we look at each section, there will be definitions given for each section. These are two definitions which are given for milk and milk products, because in milk, pasteurization is very important and sterilization is very important. So under the milk food product standards, you have the definition for pasteurization. So the definition for pasteurization, it says heat treatment means pasteurization, ultra pasteurized, sterilization or UHT treatment or boiling. Pasteurization and pasteurized and similar terms actually means or is aimed at reducing the microbial content by heating the milk. So it says it means a microbicidal heat treatment aimed at reducing the number of pathogenic microorganisms in milk and liquid milk products. Pasteurization is generally aimed or focused to destroy Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Coxiella burnetii, which are generally present on the udder of the animal and could come into the milk. When pasteurization is associated with milk, it means milk which has been heated to at least 63 degrees Celsius and held at that temperature continuously for 30 minutes, or heating it to 72 degrees Celsius and holding it there for 15 seconds, or any other temperature time combination sufficient enough to bring about the death or reduction of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Coxiella burnetii. So how does the food analyst test whether it is pasteurized milk? So here the test, if you look at the food product standards for milk, is that all the milk products which are pasteurized should show a negative phosphatase test. What is the implication of doing this phosphatase test? Phosphatase is an enzyme or it is a protein. So when it is heated to these temperatures, it will get denatured. When it is denatured, you will not be able to measure its activity. So therefore, if you get a negative phosphatase test, that indicates the milk has been pasteurized. Sterilization also of milk has been defined, and again here very clearly it says it is defined when used in association with milk or milk products, and this means it is a typical process of heating milk or milk product in sealed containers continuously at 115 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes to ensure preservation at room temperature for a period not less than 30 days. The UHT milk or the UHT sterilization treatment is defined as when you heat the milk or milk product to 135 degrees Celsius for 1 second or more in a continuous flow and then pack it under aseptic conditions. So under every section, if there is any word that is used and the meanings are several, the definitions pertaining to that standard are explained in detail. So now let us look at these standards, some examples, and see what the quality and safety standards mean. So if you look at part 2.4, this includes cereals and cereal products. Now, under 2.4, you have 2.41, which includes atta, and then you have all the other components which comprise of cereals and cereal products, including besan, food grains, corn flour, macaroni products, because the macaroni comes as a cereal product. It is a product of wheat. We also have standards for rolled oats, starchy foods such as tapioca or the sago, the sabudana, as well as biscuits and bread, because these are cereal products. So 2.4.1 is atta. How do you read these numbers? If we go back, this is chapter 2. 2.4, if we go back, you see 2 and then 2.1 is dairy, so it is 2.4. So all cereal and cereal products will start with the numbers 2.4. And then you have 2.4.1, which is atta. And under each one, you may have another category. So it becomes 2.4.1.1, 2.4.1.2, and so on. So this type of numbering allows any new products under that category to be added to the food product standards. So if you look at atta, atta comes under 2.4.1.1, which is atta. In the definition for atta is given. So here it says atta or resultant atta means the coarse product obtained by milling and grinding clean wheat free from rodent hair and excreta. It should conform to the moisture content cannot exceed 14%. The total ash cannot exceed 2% on dry weight basis. The acid insoluble ash cannot exceed 0.15%. Gluten must be above 6%, and the alcohol acidity should not exceed 0.1%. All these standards have some meaning or the other. Why is the moisture set at 14%? The moisture is set at 14% because above 14%, you will see that there can be yeast and mold growth, and also it is prone to insect attack. Why should the acid insoluble in dilute HCl be less than 0.5? That is because this shows the silica content or any mud that has been carried. We know that silica contains the inorganic and organic inorganic metals, and so therefore these are hazardous and cannot exceed. Gluten is actually a quality parameter to tell you the quality of the atta. Alcohol acidity over here is a parameter to tell you whether the atta is a quality parameter, whether the atta is good or not, because atta contains fat, and the fat can undergo rancidity, or it can undergo hydrolysis, that is the hydrolytic rancidity, acid can be produced, and that acid is measured. Now, under the same category of atta, you see we have fortified atta, which is 2.4.1.2, and we also have protein-rich Paustik atta. So fortified atta is atta that can be fortified with calcium carbonate, iron, or these vitamins, and the levels to which they are fortified are shown. And also the fortification tells you which salts can be used for fortification. Coming to the protein-rich Paustikata, this Paustikata is meant for the children, and here the protein content is enhanced, or the quality of the protein is enhanced by adding either soya flour or groundnut flour, whose protein is superior to that of atta. So here, this combination makes the protein have a PD CAS of 1. So on analysis, if the samples you find do not meet these specifications, or if they exceed the limits of the safety parameters, it will be considered unsafe. If they do not meet the quality parameters, it means that it is substandard. Then let's look at another component of cereals and cereal products, which is the food grains. So food grains comes under the category of 2.4.6. And under these food grains comes wheat, maize, jawar, rice, etc. Now let us look at what is the regulation and the standard given for rice, which is 2.4.6.5. So food grains have been defined, and it says that it is meant for human consumption. It shall be either whole or broken kernels of cereals, millets, and pulses. And in addition, it indicates that it should be free from Archibon mexicana and Kesari dal. You will see in the restriction of sales, you cannot sell any food which contains Kesari dal. It also says that they shall be free from added coloring matter. That means you cannot color any cereal, millet, or pulse to hide the substandard nature. But very often you will find that the tur dal or pigeon pea is colored with maternal yellow to hide the substandard. So when you wash the dal, if you get a yellow color, you know that it is adulterated. The food grains, it says, shall not contain any insecticide residues other than specified in Regulation 1. Actually, this wording is now being changed. It says the food grains should not exceed, should not be more than the residues which are specified. So the residues levels are specified, as we will see in the chapter on contaminants, toxins, and residues. So therefore, pesticide analysis or pesticide residue analysis must be carried out to tell you what the levels are. So it cannot exceed. Remember, for any contaminant or toxin or residue, it always cannot exceed. So we always have the lower limit. So the food grains meant for grinding, processing shall be clean, free from all impurities, including foreign matter, and it says extraneous matter. So now, what is this foreign matter and extraneous matter? So in the definition, you will find that definitions are given for all these added words that are used. So the standard for wheat, which is 2.4.6.2, says wheat shall be the dried mature grains of Triticum aestivum or Triticum vulgar, Triticum drum, Triticum the spherococcum, the dicoccum, or compactum. These are all different varieties of wheat, and each variety of wheat is used for different purposes such as bread making, biscuit making, chapati making, etc. It says it should be sweet, clean, and wholesome. So here it says moisture, not more than 14% by weight. When you do the moisture by 130 to 133 degrees. For foreign matter, the extraneous matter, it says not more than 1% by weight. Other edible grains, not more than 6% by weight. Damaged grains, not more than 6%. Beveled grains, not more than 10% by count. So the regulations have to be read carefully because at times they are by weight and you see it is by count. So if you count 100 grains of wheat, I think not more than 10 grains of wheat should be beveled. And of course, uric acid is given a standard, not more than 100 milligrams per gram. Sometimes you cannot see the damaged grains by insects, but if you measure the uric acid levels, you know that it is infected with um, the insects if uric acid exceeds 100 milligrams per kilogram, that is 100 ppm. You also have for aflatoxin, that is a naturally occurring toxin, and deoxy nonival. These are two toxins which are produced by fungus which infect the wheat. So these three, see, you have extraneous matter, you have edible grains, you have damaged grains, and bevel grains. So how does one person define, or how does one know which of the grains is which? So it is defined at the bottom of the standard. Foreign matter means any extraneous matter other than the food grains. So it includes metallic pieces, sand, gravel, dirt, pebbles, stones, earth, clay, mud, animal filth, etc. In the case of rice, kernels or pieces of kernels, if any, if they have mud sticking on the surface of the rice. Organic matter consists of the husk, straw, weed, seeds, and other inedible grains, and also paddy in the case of rice. So the definition for foreign matter is given. Next, you have the definition given for poisonous, toxic, and harmful seeds. So this means any seeds which are present in quantities above the permissible limit, which are dangerous to or deleterious to health. So these could be the datura seeds, it could be corn cockle, or it could be also the akra, which is the Vishya fava seed. So as a food analyst, it is good to procure or find out what are the datura seeds, what is corn cockle, and what is akra, so that when you do the analysis, you will be able to easily identify these toxic seeds. Then you have damaged grain. So the definition for damaged grain says kernels, all pieces of kernels that are sprouted or internally damaged as a result of heat or by microbe or moisture, or if they are ergot affected or they are kernel burnt grains. Beveled grains means grains or kernels that are partially or wholly bored by insects injurious to grains, but does not include germ-eaten grains and egg-spotted grains. So you have to know and identify these grains. So generally, these damaged grains, bevel grains, and other edible grains are counted with the help of a big magnifying glass. And at times it could be verified by using a simple microscope. So if you look at the grains and the cereal grains and the cereal product, moisture is a very important factor. And why is moisture a very important factor? Because you know it is used. Moisture is used as a filler for great economic importance, because they can add moisture to the grain to increase the weight. But if it increases the weight beyond the limit, we know that there will be fungal and mold growth, as well as it is easily attacked by the insects. Now, so there are, as I said, from 2.1 to 2.16. So there are different standards for different food products. These are all food products which have been standardized. Now, the under chapter 3 of this section, you have substances which are added to food. And we have gone through in detail with a webinar on food additives, and we have discussed what are food additives, how the food additive limits are set, the safety of the food additives, and the limit of food additives. But just let us have a recap of what we done. So the basic legislation on food additives and processing aids, according to the rules and regulations, say that the limits for use of food additives, crop contaminants, pesticide residues, residues of veterinary drugs, heavy metals, processing aids, mycotoxins, antibiotics, and pharmacologically active substance, and irradiation of food. So this regulation, by virtue of it, these additives are regulated. Their limits in the foods are regulated. So you have seen this definition. A food additive means any substance not normally consumed as a food by itself, and not normally used as a typical ingredient of the food, but it is used in the food for a technological intervention, including the organoleptic properties, either during manufacture, processing, preparation, packaging, and transport of these. And it, by its product, becomes a component of or otherwise affecting the characteristics of such foods, but does not include contaminants or substances. So food additives have got a technological intervention or a technological role to play, such as an antioxidant. An antioxidant is added to oil to prevent rancidity or to prevent the oxidative degradation of the oil. It could also be added to prevent the oxidative degradation of pigments such as beta carotene and the other carotenoids, as you have seen when we have looked at plant pigments. So the standard or the regulation also says that the food additives can be added to the food subject to the provisions that these regulations are used under the GMP. And these namely include that the food additive, when it is used in the food, will be limited to the lowest possible level necessary. What this means is, even if the regulation says 1000 ppm, it is not implemented, or it doesn't mean that the food business operator has to add up to 1000 ppm. He can add the minimal amount necessary to prevent the action. So it could be just 120 or 150. So that is the good manufacturing practice. And remember that the food additive, in whatever level you add it, becomes a component of the food as a result of the manufacturing, processing, or packaging. And the additive which is used for the food processing purposes must be of food grade. It cannot be a chemical grade. Citric acid is used as an additive. You cannot use the chemical grade citric acid as citric acid in the food. You have to use the food grade citric acid. So the standard specifies what is the quality or what is the purity of the food additive that has to be used. You know that there are 27 different classes of food additives, and they all have the INS numbering for the additives. The INS numbering in EPSA, you will see that it has a E number. That is because it is for Europe. But the same number that follows the alphabet E is the INS number. So INS 132 is the same as E132. INS 111 is the same as INS E11. So as I said, the specifications for the identity and purity of food additives is also given. I haven't discussed much about the role of food additives because in the webinar on food additives, we discussed or I described in detail for which technological purpose which food additive is used. So it would be a repetition here. So the specifications for the identity and purity of the food additives are given. The regulation clearly says that it should be food grade quality. It also specifies the identity and purity by giving the molecular formula of the additive. It also gives you the chemical name, and it also gives you the limits of heavy metals, etc., which will make it much safer. And these additives must conform to the specification throughout their product storage, transport, handling in accordance with GMP. So let us look at the examples for the food additives. But before that, you need to know what is the difference between a processing aid and a food additive. We have looked at it earlier, but just to remind you that a processing aid is not consumed as a food by itself, and it is never an ingredient. It is only used to aid in the manufacture or processing. For example, to extract juice, enzymes could be added to degrade the cell wall so that the recovery of the juice is much greater. And a food additive also, like a processing aid, is not consumed, but it is used as a characteristic. It is not normally used as a characteristic ingredient. It is used for technological purposes. The main difference between a processing aid and a food additive in our regulation is a processing aid need not be disclosed on the label, whereas a food additive, in whatever amounts it is used, must be declared in the list of ingredients. And of course, the residue of the processing aid should not pose a health risk. FSSAI is in the process of releasing the list of processing aids that can be used for different food processing technologies, and also soon will come out with the standards for each of these processing aids. And food additives, you know, are regulated for different food categories. So to recollect, for all food additives undergo food safety assessment. They can be carried out in silico and in vitro. The testing of toxicity, testing of the food additives is carried out according to the OECD guidelines. And using these guidelines, the no observed effect level or the no observed adverse effect level are studied by doing the different dose the toxicity testing studies, that is the dose response and extrapolation. And then the survey is done to get the exposure of the food additives, and from that you get the daily intake, the average acceptable daily intake, which is the no observed effect level divided by 1000. And this ADI is estimated by JEPFA of the amount of food additives expressed on a body weight basis that can be ingested daily over a lifetime without appreciable health risk. So the tables 1 to 15 of the regulation lists the food additives which are permitted for use in different types of food, which include colors, preservatives, antioxidants, emulsifiers, sweeteners, flavoring agents, etc. The limits of food additives are all based on risk analysis and what is the implication of the food additive if the food analyst, whether it is in the state laboratory or in the referral food laboratory, they analyze the levels of the additive and the additive is found to exceed the permissible limit, it will be declared as unsafe. And the penalty for unsafe food will have to be paid by the FBO. So an unsafe food additive is equal to adulterated food, and an unapproved food additive is equal to an unsafe food additive. An unapproved food additive is also equivalent to an adulterated food. The concept of carryover of food additives has been defined. It means that it applies to the presence of additives such as colors, flavoring agents, anti-caking agents, emulsifying and preservatives and other agents in food which are used in the raw material or in the ingredients, and these during the process have been carried over. So the presence of an additive in a food through the application of carryover principle is admissible in general unless otherwise physically prohibited. So total additive, including the carryover through the raw material, should not exceed the maximum amount permitted under the Appendix A, that is tables 1 to 50. However, the carryover food additive principle is not permitted for infant formula, follow-up formula, formula for special medical purposes for infants, and complementary foods for infants and younger children. One of the processing aids for which we have a limit is that of the food grade hexane, because it is used to do the solvent extraction of oils and edible flow. The levels of hexane cannot exceed 5 ppm. The maximum that can be present is 5 ppm. Which additives can be added to which food? We have seen that these are listed according to the category of foods which are now there in the Indian Food Code. So food additives which are permitted for a specific food or a food category that are made operational by the standards of food additives used in various food categories of the food code. FBOs who have received approval for any additive other those mentioned in tables 1 to 15 under the product approval process are allowed to use them, are allowed to continue to use these approvals because previously they had a product approval process. So if you look at the permitted, just as an example, in which food are synthetic food colors allowed? So you will see that they are allowed in ice cream, frozen desserts, flavored milk, yogurt, ice cream mix powder. They are also allowed in biscuits, wafers, pastries, cakes, peas, strawberries, cherries in hermetically sealed containers. All these are allowed to have the synthetic food color. The non-alcoholic carbohydrates, fruit drinks, etc., custard powder, anything. However, the maximum limit is 100 ppm for A, B, D, E, and F, and 200 ppm for the colors. In the amendment to the regulation, allular red is a color which was the most recently added synthetic food color. So coming to the standard for an additive, for example, the standard for tartrazine is given. The common name is tartrazine. Synonyms are FD and C yellow number 5, food yellow 4. So all these relate or pertain to tartrazine. The color of a 0.1% solution will be yellow. The color index number is given. The chemical name is given. The empirical formula is given. The formula weight or molecular weight is given, and the solubility in water and ethanol are also given. So here in the additives, the standard, so what is the grade of the additive that you can use is defined. It also defines in a table what the total dye content should be, what the moisture should be, and what are the levels of lead, arsenic, and heavy metals for the safety. So you see, we do not have product standards only for the foods which are standardized. We also have standards for the food additives. Then in the same chapter, we have other substances for use in food products, and these include the flavoring agents and related substances. So here it says, just as a food additive can be added, the flavoring agent can be added to the food as per the good manufacturing practices. So the following flavoring agents are allowed: all natural flavors and natural flavoring substances, nature identical flavoring substances, and artificial flavoring substances. These flavoring substances, which are extracted from different natural compounds or are synthetic, also we have standards for them. The flavoring agents are permitted to contain antioxidants, emulsifying and stabilizing agents. You're also allowed to use the anti-caking agents in flavor, and the only anti-caking agent which is allowed is the amorphous silicon dioxide with the Ionis number of 551, and it can be used at a maximum level of 2%. The restriction for the flavoring agents is that the following flavoring agents are not allowed to be used in any food. So this includes, you see, coumarin and dihydrocoumarin, beta-azarone, cinnamyl anthracylate, eugenyl, which will give you the clove smell, clove flavor. The cinnamyl anthracylate will give you the cinnamon flavor. Safrole and isosafrole will give you the saffron flavor. So the food category system we have looked at this has been categorized in the Indian Food Code. You have 17 food codes. So according to the food code, you can look at the permissible food additive. We have gone through this, but just to have a recollection of it and a recap, the hierarchy of the Indian food structure is just like how you had for the food product codes. You have different levels. So you see dairy product and analogs are at level 1. Milk and dairy based drinks are 1.1. Buttermilk is 1.1.1. Milk plain is 1.1.1, and this. So there is a category-wise approval of the food additives. And so you see, when you look at it, you have a main category, which is level 1, you have a subcategory, which is level 2, and you have a subcategory, which is level 3. So what is unique about the food additive tables and decision is, it is an orderly decision tree approach. If it is allowed in the main category, it will be allowed in all the categories to follow. So it will be allowed in the subcategory and the subcategory of that. If it is allowed in the subcategory, it is not allowed in the main category, but it will be allowed in all the subcategories below. And also, if it is allowed in this subcategory, it is allowed in the categories below this subcategory, but it is not allowed in this subcategory. So to look at these examples, just let us look at the category-wise approval as an example in the processed food. So these are the category-wise numbers for the fruits. Fruits and vegetables come under 4.0, and processed food comes under 4.1.2. So here you have sodium benzoate. So sodium benzoate is allowed in 4.1.2. So therefore, it is allowed in all the categories of 4.1.2. However, it is not allowed in 4.1.1 or any category of 4.1.1. So this is what I said, explained to you about this subcategory and this subcategory. So if this is 4.1.1 and this is 4.1.2, if it is allowed in this, it is allowed in all the subcategories below. It is not allowed in this, it is not allowed in the subcategories below. Okay, and if let us look at this. If synthetic color is allowed in 4.1.2.5, it is only allowed for 4.1.2.5. It is not allowed in any of the categories above or in any of the categories below. However, if there was a category 4.1.2.5.1, it would be allowed in that. So therefore, it will be allowed only in this and not in all the categories of 4.1.2. So this is the hierarchy, and so therefore it is very easy for the FBOs to find out whether food additive is allowed in their product, whether standardized or not standardized. In addition to the food additives, this chapter also tells us about what the levels are permitted for the food hygiene and food safety of that. So if we look at the dehydrated vegetables, the dehydrated vegetables have been defined very well. It says what it is, what type of processing can be done. It also tells us what is the moisture content of each of these dehydrated vegetables. It also tells us sulfur dioxide is used as a processing aid and as an additive. What are the levels it could be being added? It tells us what are the levels, safety, the ash content. It also has a process known as the peroxidase test. So here again, peroxidase is an enzyme, and so the negative test correlates with the absence of the microbes, or it shows that it is microbially safe. However, still, if you look, we have that the product may contain food additives permitted in these regulations as in Appendix A, and it should conform to the microbiology requirements given in B. So for these the processed fruits and vegetables, they must conform to these microbial safety parameters. So the total plate count, yeast and mold and flat sour organisms tells you the hygiene, that is how hygienically they were processed. If these exceed the limits, that means they were unhygienically processed. The safety of the food is defined by these, and if you see, it is very stringent, absence in 25 grams or 25 milliliters, indicating the safety or the level of hazard which is there. So it must be absent in 25 grams. Then we have As you see there, the proprietary food, and proprietary food as per section 22 of the Act has been defined as an article of food for which standards have not been specified. That means in the list of standards what we have the chapter 2.0, this food that FBO, if he wants to make, it is not standardized, it doesn't fall into any category of that, then it is known as a proprietary food. So this proprietary food should not contain any food or ingredient which is prohibited under the Act. So in the regulation for proprietary food, it is a food which has not been standardized under these regulations. The proprietary food has to be labeled as a proprietary food. The name must describe as clearly as possible the nature of the composition of food or category which it falls under in the Indian Food Code, and the proprietary food shall comply with all the regulations, that is of the food additive regulations in Appendix A and the microbiological safety parameters in Appendix B. So here are a number of proprietary foods for which we do not have standards, such as chocolate chip cookies, or maybe oatmeal squares, muesli, etc. And then the amended rules for the proprietary food, which came into being on January 15th, very clearly says it is not standardized. It should contain only those ingredients other than additives which are either standardized or permitted. Proprietary food shall use only such additives as specified for the category. Proprietary foods products shall comply with the food additive provisions as in Appendix A and microbiology in B. But most important is that the food business operator should be fully responsible for the safety of the proprietary food. Proprietary food excludes novel foods, foods for special dietary use, foods for special medical purposes, functional foods, nutraceuticals, health supplements, and such other food articles which the central government may notify. And proprietary food does not include, just by increasing or decreasing the total soluble solids content, if there is a change in the ash content, or you decrease the fat content, or increase the food content, or you replace the sugar with non-nutritive sweetener, this does not qualify to be a proprietary food. So FSSAI has notified the food safety and standards, health supplements, nutraceutical, food for special dietary use, and food for special medical use. And we have looked at all these categories on the webinar in nutraceuticals. So it covers health supplements, nutraceuticals, foods for special use other than infants and those products intended to be taken under medical supervision, foods for special medical purposes, foods with probiotics, with prebiotics, and specialty foods containing plant botanicals. So a health supplement has been defined. It is a product intended to supplement the diet that bears or contains one or more of the following ingredients. So it could be vitamins, minerals, botanicals, amino acids, metabolites, enzymes, pro and prebiotics. And these vitamins and minerals cannot exceed 1 RDA, that is the recommended daily allowance. These are not drugs as defined in the drugs and things, but they can be marketed in single-use packages or dose-like capsules. The nutraceuticals are purified extracts. They are isolated and purified from food or from non-food sources, and these have, in addition to nutrition, they also have a health benefit or a potential preventive benefit. So they can, again, just like health supplements, be marketed as powders, tablets, liquid jelly. They can use the ingredients listed in the schedules, and the additives for nutraceuticals are also listed separately. They do not come under tables 1 to 15 of Appendix A. If anyone wants to use a nutrient or a nutraceutical which is not listed in any of these schedules, they must provide documented evidence for history of safe use for 15 years in India and 30 years in the country of origin, and the quantity cannot exceed what is given in Schedule 6. So the ingredients permitted have been listed under vitamins, plant botanicals, minerals, amino acids, prebiotics, probiotics, nucleotides, and the. So totally you have almost about 600 ingredients. So foods for special dietary use other than infants also have been defined. These include foods for low weight, obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. They also include those for pregnant and lactating women and the geriatric population and celiac disease. But these foods, as defined, can only be taken under medical advice. They are not over the counter or freely available in the grocery store. So it is under the supervision of a medical doctor, these foods are prescribed. So again, for these foods, there are uh, standards. For example, and the slimming and weight management and weight control, it says the food should provide energy not less than 800 kilocalories, and it should be not more than 1,200 calories. And individual portions should provide approximately one third or one fourth of the total energy. A formula food presented as a replacement for one or more meals. You will see this in the obesity foods, and for those whom the doctor has prescribed that they should lose weight because of heart problems or they've had heart surgery, it should provide energy not less than 200 kilocalories and not more than 400 kilocalories. When this food is given as a total replacement for the major part of the diet, the average intake should not exceed 1,200. So the average daily intake, the calories for a healthy individual, about 60 kilograms, is about 2,100 to 2,400 calories. So here it is restricted, the calorie is restricted to about 1,200. And in these foods, because protein will be more, it says, of course, here the protein content of the food cannot exceed 125 grams per day, because if it exceeds 125 grams, there will be a load on the kidney. And the protein which is used in these special foods for special medical purposes should be a complete protein with a PD-CAS of 1, that is a protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. If it is less than 1, they can be made, it can be compensated for by adding amino acids, and the amino acids which can be added must all be in the L form except methionine, which can be in the DL form. If the protein has a amino acid score PD-CAS of 0.8 or more, it can be used in the formula food for the weight control diet and not for the other diets. For medically foods for special medical purpose, the rules or regulations indicate that this food is a food which is prepared for feeding through the enteral tubes, and it is not for parenteral use. That means through the oral route, mean it is only meant for tubes through oral feeding and it is not meant for any intravenous feeding. So you have a nutritionally complete food with standard nutrient formula, or it could be a nutritionally complete food with a nutrient adopted formulation, for example, for the inborn errors of metabolism, as we discussed, such as phenylketonuria, where the food must be absent in phenylalanine, or if it is for any other medical condition where one of the nutrients has to be removed or added, or it can be a nutritionally incomplete food which is taken along with the other food. So it is with a standard formulation or a nutrient adopted formulation specific for a disease, disorder, or medical condition, which is not suitable to be used as the sole source of nourishment. That means other food also is there, whereas the nutritional complete food, if you look, is the sole source of nourishment for the consumer. And then you have the list of a probiotics food where you can add probiotics. FSSAI has listed about 28 probiotics which can be used, and the only regulation or quality parameter is that the added probiotic ingredient should be more than 10 to the power of 8 CFU. Then we come to prohibition and restriction on sales. FSSAI clearly indicates in the version 3 as of 31/8/2018, no person can sell milk which contains added water, ghee which contains added matter not derived from milk fat, skimmed milk as milk, a mixture of 2 or more edible oils as an edible oil, vanaspati to ghee, turmeric to which any foreign substance is added. You know, they add starch to turmeric, so that is a foreign substance. Mixture of coffee other than chicory. They cannot sell dahi or curd which is not prepared from boiled, pasteurized or sterilized milk. You cannot sell a milk or a milk product with any substance not found in milk. For example, sucrose or urea, etc. These ingredients are not allowed. Kesari gram or the kesari dal, foods articles coated with mineral oil. No person is allowed to sell, offer or expose the sale of mineral oil or any food which is coated with mineral oil, except where mineral oil is permitted. You cannot sell carbia calosa and honeydew honey without having an AgMark seal. No body is allowed to use the word honey or any mark or illustration resembling it on the label or package in any advertisement for any food that resembles honey but is not pure honey. Also, following ingredients are not permitted, that is tobacco and nicotine cannot be used as an ingredient in any food product. Carbide gas cannot be used for ripening of fruits. Fresh fruits and vegetables should be free from rotting. They should be free from coating of waxes, mineral oil and colors. The fresh fruits which are coated with beeswax, carnauba wax or shellac wax which do not exceed GMP must be labeled, because that is a labeling requirement. Otherwise, other fresh fruits and vegetables which are sold in the open market without these labels should not be waxed and should not be mineral oil should not be put on them. You cannot sell admixtures of ghee or butter. Kangra tea has to be sold under the license of the agricultural produce. If a FBO wants to sell flavored tea, he must be registered with the tea board, and the registration number of the tea board along with FSSAI license must be present. Then we come to contaminants, toxins and residues. You have metal contaminants, we know. So there are limits for lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury, tin, copper and nickel. This is the latest version of 26th April. Crop contaminants such as aflatoxin in cereals and cereal products have been defined. Aflatoxin in milk is defined, cannot exceed. Paculin in apples cannot exceed 50 ppb. Ochratoxin and DON or deoxyvalenol cannot exceed. Agaric acid in mushrooms and alcoholic drinks is defined. HCN in tapioca products, hypericin in alcoholic products, and saccharol have been defined. Also, there are levels given for the PCBs and the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in fish and fish products. The limits of 213 pesticides in various raw and processed agricultural commodities has been notified. So you cannot exceed those limits. And antibiotics and pharmacologically active substances also have been notified. These include chloramphenicol, nitrofuran, and sulfonamides, which are banned, and limits for tetracycline, oxytetracycline, oxalonic acid permitted in seafoods, and several other antibiotic residues and veterinary drug residues have been notified and gazetted. So when a food analyst analyzes for any of these parameters and it exceeds the limit, then the food becomes unsafe and they are liable for punishment under the Act. So this completes the food products standards and the regulations for under the Food Safety and Standards Act and Rules and Regulations 2011. So the next webinar will be tomorrow at 4 p.m. where I will discuss in detail the most recent packaging and labeling regulations.